Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next edition here of xAPI cohort. We're already in week 6, if you can believe it. And today we have Thomas Terrell Croft with us. And before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and go through some of the slides. I want to remind you that we do have these tables, networking tables, team gatherings 24/7 for the length of the core cohort. All you need to do is log into AirMeet here and you can go to any of the tables. I want to make sure, yeah. And you can go to any of the tables and meet with your team. Although you may see only 8 seats there, it will expand up to 125. So if you have 30 members on your team, feel free to jump in there and do some teamwork. The next thing is we have our team updates. So for this week, these are the teams I have listed in Slack that I see that there's some kind of activity in these particular teams. And I have some people on the docket here who would be given us. It's Kelly Reed. It's actually Evan is also going to be discussing. I had made this earlier. And I have a question mark for Bethany Klein. If she's out there, hopefully she can give us an update. If you want to give us an update, go ahead and send me a private message because we are going to have those team updates at the end of the session. And we want to know where you are. If you're just saying, hey, I just started, please tell us that. And I'll add your team here. Or I've got a team going and I want to find out how to use it in K-12 because I did see that note in there and I saw a response, but you never know what there is there. And there's directions on how to create a Slack channel in previous sessions, and I think it's also in Slack itself. If it isn't, feel free to drop me an email, kgleason@learningguild.com. And if your team is not listed, ping me in Slack at Karen Gleason to let me know you're working on something and I just haven't seen it yet. Now, at the culmination of our cohort, April 27th, after we're done with our 12 weeks, we're going to have a party. So that's exciting, right? We are going to have a showcase of xAPI projects, and they're the ones you've developed in cohort. So please, 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 please register for this because even if you haven't completed your project or if it's halfway and you've decided not to share with us, I hope you do wherever you are in your project. But here's the party where we're going to see what people have been working on. And here, xAPI party, this is the call for proposal. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat in just a minute or two. And we want to see those proposals before March 31st. They don't have to be full-blown xAPI projects. Please know that. Please say, hey, we started. This is how far we got. Great, because someone's going to learn something. I know I'll learn something. And we want you all to join us because it's always better when we learn from each other. So, April 12th through the 14th, Learning Solutions in Orlando. We have some special xAPI focused sessions. We have a BYOD, bring your own device, no code xAPI implementation with Jeff Batt. That'll be really great. And then, of course, with the infamous Megan Torrance of Torrance Learning, who used to have the xAPI, used to host it, she's going to be talking about getting started with learning analytics for xAPI. Now, many of you are not members of the Guild. This is who we are, the Learning Guild. We're sponsoring this and we're bringing this to you without a charge. We also have free membership without a charge. And for that, you get all kinds of information for your L&D practice. We have publications, we have event discounts, we have all kinds of session recordings on all different kinds of topics that are available to members for free. Plus, we do have other levels for like an online conference subscription or Learning Leaders Alliance. And we have our face-to-face conferences. I'll drop the link in chat, but join us, please, please join us because you are going to be surprised at what you're going to get. All right, with that, I am going to stop talking and introduce Thomas Terrell Croft. He is with Berry Cloud. He's going to talk to us today about sending xAPI data. He has a colleague with him, Katie, who will be Katie Noak, who will be in the chat and in the Q&A, who will be talking and maybe answering some questions as a representative of Berry Cloud. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Thomas. I'm going to turn off my camera and my video. I will be in the background. You can always private chat me in the chat, and turning it over to Thomas. And about 35 after the hour, we're going to start with those team project updates. So ping me if you're not on my list. Thanks.
Hi there, all. So I'm just going to share my screen. So just give me one moment. So hopefully you can see my screen. If somebody could give me a thumbs up, if you can, that would be great. But brilliant. Okay, so I'd like to take you through this presentation today. It's called Sending xAPI Data, and we're going to be introducing xAPI Java, and I'm presented by myself. So let me just get this timer started so I don't overrun. Okay, so quick introduction about me. I'm the head of IT at Berry Cloud. I've got 10 years of experience with xAPI, and I've got 20 years of experience with Java. Quick caveat, I am not an instructor, I'm not a teacher. This is very much me, fish out of water. So I do apologize in advance. I'm sure there's all sorts of rules that I'm breaking about how to teach people. And so please try to learn something from me as a novice in regards to instructing. And then the other thing is, I can learn from you. I am by no means an authority on xAPI or Java. I have a lot of experience. I have things that I know. I can hopefully pass on some of those things, but I'm sure there's an awful lot of things that I can learn from you, both now and in the future. So please do reach out to me if you think I'm missing something, or indeed if you would like some of my advice, if you think that I might have some experience that might be useful to you. I'm very happy to give and receive. So the other thing that I want to just point out is there's no coding during this presentation. So I'm sorry if that's disappointed anyone, but it's not something that I feel comfortable with doing myself. It tends to go wrong. So this is just going to be quite a broad discussion about this particular library that I'm introducing. And the one thing that I would say is that xAPI knowledge and Java knowledge is assumed. So I'm sorry if I lose you on some of these things, but you don't need a detailed Java knowledge. A simple working knowledge of programming languages should suffice. Okay, so let's move forward. So what is xAPI Java? Okay, so xAPI Java is an open source library, and that's going to help you create Java applications that send or receive statements or documents. So there are two parts to it. There's the actual client, which I think will probably be most useful to most people, and then there's the model. The client is for sending statements and sending and receiving statements and sending and receiving xAPI documents. So the state documents, for example, it's fully xAPI conformant. It's complete in that it lets you send and receive to all of the xAPI resources. So there's nothing missing. And then there's the model. The client itself actually utilizes the model, and the model allows you to create your own clients, should you wish, create your own server applications that send or receive statements and documents. So receive is underlined here because it's not just about what we're talking about here. It's not just about sending and receiving statements. This also opens the possibility for you to actually receive those documents. So sorry, it's not just about retrieving, it's also about receiving. So that's a brief overview. One of the things I'd like to say is, even though this is a new open source library, it's something that we've had a library that we've utilized within our organization for probably the last 8 years, and it's evolved over that time. But just recently we've decided to open source it, and we've decided to polish it so that it could actually be put out into the community and used by the community. Okay, so let's move forward. So why create a library? Why publish a library? Well, the first thing is that it's published. It's published on open source, well, on a publicly available artifact repository. So Maven Central is the sort of de facto standard place where people publish Java libraries, and that's where we've published it to. So if you can consume it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it's active, so it's being actively developed. Okay, it's documented. It's modern, so we're using lots and lots of modern techniques. We're using the builder pattern. The objects themselves are immutable. Everything that we've done has been test driven. We use a fluent interface, and I'll get into some of these things as we go through. And it's reactive. So these are some very modern concepts, and it's modular. As I already discussed, you can tear this apart, and if you don't like the way that we've written the client, you can simply take the model and just use the model. So it's modular, and moving forward, we will add additional modules which you can consume in your own projects if you so wish, but you do not need to consume it all. And I should say, with this why is, well, hey, why open source another library? There are Java libraries out there, and that's true, there are, and we have used those libraries in the past. But those libraries are now starting to show their age, and they were very well written at the time, but a lot of them haven't been maintained. Many of them have actually been deprecated or archived now, and also there's only actually one library which I know of that is actually available for people to use on Maven Central. So that's why we've decided to open source this. And of course, the overall why is because we want to see more xAPI usage out there. So we want to help the community. So that's why we're making our own internal library available open source for other people to use. Okay, so why Java? So one of the caveats that I would say is everything I've said about Java libraries is not true of other libraries for other languages. So xAPI libraries in JavaScript, TypeScript, for example, there has been a boom recently. People have got interested again. The JavaScript libraries have really been modernized. They are very good libraries, and I thoroughly recommend using them and having a look at them. They're very well written, and Java has lagged behind. So why Java? Well, Java is still the third most popular language used on GitHub. It's the third most requested language by employers. So there's a lot of organizations that still want Java skills. And 50% of traditional application servers out there are actually Java application servers. And then what's really interesting recently is this drive towards serverless. And I think Java, I might be slightly biased here, but I think Java is actually has played catch up until recently, and now I think it's overtaking some of the other languages when it comes to serverless. The Grail VM native image is something that's very interesting. It's got very, very low startup time, so it makes it very suitable for serverless applications. So there's definitely an application for Java there. And then, of course, obviously, Android, specifically Kotlin. If you're looking to do mobile development and you're looking to do xAPI, then Java is a natural fit when it comes to Android. Okay, so hopefully that's justified Java. So let's have a look at getting started with the xAPI client. So the first thing is this is a Maven configuration. So if you have a project which is using Maven, or indeed any other of the popular build tools, but I've just got an example in Maven here. You can include the dependency, and we'll make this available to you so you can see this in the documentation. But effectively, you just include this dependency into your project. So once you've got that dependency in your project, and as I say, it's published, it's out there in the world. So that is literally all you need to do in order to get access to this code, this library. Once you've got that, you can then configure yourself a client. And configuring the client is very straightforward. There's basically only two things that you need to do. You need to set the URL of your LRS, and you need to set the authentication header of your LRS. That's literally all you need to do. And once you've done that, you actually then have a client that you can call the methods on to actually send, receive xAPI data. So that's the configuration. So let's move on. So sending a statement is probably the first thing that you want to do, and potentially maybe the only thing you want to do. So this is a demonstration of a fluid interface. So you can see how this is quite simple and straightforward. So we've got the client on line 1, and then we are posting a statement. And then within the statement itself, we've got an actor, we've got a verb, and we've got an activity. So those things should be quite familiar to people. And then you can see that we're actually setting the different properties of the actor, and we're actually setting the verb, and we're actually setting the activity object. In terms of reactive, just to go back to the slide that we were talking about the features, in this particular instance, the way that I'm using it in this example is I'm using it synchronously. So we're actually blocking. So this actually will send the request to the server, to the LRS, but it will block and it will wait for the response to come back before actually getting to the final line, which is printing out the response from the server. But, yep.
Thomas, I just want to interrupt you really quickly here. Can you clarify to some people who aren't familiar what Maven is?
Yeah, sure. So Maven is a build management system. It helps you handle dependencies. So I guess if you're familiar with JavaScript, then the analogy would be NPM. So you would use Maven to, it's not quite the same, but if you're familiar with NPM, then you are effectively installing those dependencies into your project. So I'm not sure if that answers the question and clarifies, but hopefully it does. We can come back to it, and I'll be available if somebody's got some specific questions about that. I can come back to that as well. So yes, so this is it. This is how you actually send a statement. So hopefully it's quite readable. It's hopefully very readable to somebody that's familiar with Java, and even somebody that's not familiar with Java. Hopefully this is quite readable. And then at the end of it, the LRS should actually respond, and the LRS will respond with two things. It will respond with some headers, and it will respond with a body. And that's in the xAPI specification. So the LRS will actually send some headers, and those headers might contain things like the consistent through header, which will tell you the timestamp that the LRS is actually consistent through till, i.e. the point where the last statement that was stored, the timestamp of the last statement that was stored. But in addition to that, when you actually store a statement, you actually get the ID of the statement that you've just stored. So in this example, we're just printing that to the screen so that it can be seen. Okay, so let's move on. And then the opposite, I suppose, this is how you get a statement. So really nice and simple. It's formatted into multiple lines, but it's actually only one line of code. So one line of code to get a statement, and then obviously one line of code to actually print that statement out. So let's move on. So I suppose I wanted to demonstrate to you the builder pattern and why a modern xAPI Java library is necessary. And this is why. So this is what a traditional Java library would look like. And once again, I just want to state there's nothing wrong with this. This is just where we were in the Java community 10 years ago. And in fact, even now, you will see lots of examples that look like this with lots of getters and lots of setters. So creating an object, setting the various different properties on the object, and so on and so on and so on. This particular example is 19 lines of code without any formatting. So that's how it looks. So let's go back and look at how this statement looks with builders. So with builders, you can see with formatting, it's 6 lines of code. The formatting is only there for readability. And if we took away the new lines of code, it would literally be 1 line of code. So you can see how, so these two things are equivalent. So you can see how much, how verbose a traditional Java library would be when it comes to constructing a statement. And obviously, once you've done it, but it does detract from the readability of the code. So that's why we're quite that's why we're quite excited about the builder pattern, and why we felt the builder pattern was a good match for xAPI and creating statements. So just as a final thing, so let's have a look at what the actual JSON representation of this statement would look like. So this is the JSON representation. So of both implementations that I've shown you there without builders and with builders, this is actually what would be received by the server, this particular JSON representation. But one of the things that's actually quite exciting for me in terms of reducing complexity is you'll notice that actually there are less lines of code, and therefore, in my opinion, it's more readable with builders than it is with actually JSON. And I think one of the criticisms that's been leveled at Java quite rightly is how much boilerplate code there is, and how verbose it is, and how difficult it is to read. And certainly when it comes to JavaScript libraries that exist for xAPI, they've had up until now a huge advantage over Java libraries because they are so much more readable, because effectively you just send JSON that looks like this. So it's very readable if you know xAPI statements and what they look like. Let's move on. So, okay, quality assurance. So this project, we want to make sure that there are certain guarantees when you're using it. So we use a piece of software called CheckStyle, which is used to enforce the Google Java style guide. We could have picked any style guide, but we picked Google. It's quite well known, quite well used. So it will make sure when it comes to tabs versus spaces, it's opinionated. When it comes to how many tabs to use for indentation, again, it's opinionated. So the code will be consistent throughout, no matter who's written it, who's contributed, that code will have to meet that Google Java style guideline. So we also have a tool called Sonar, which performs automatic pull request reviews. So when anybody contributes to this project, which they can do so through GitHub, when anybody contributes, the first thing that will happen is that Sonar will actually perform a pull request review automatically. And that will tick off various different boxes, such as security and complexity and readability. So Sonar will do all of that for us. There's another piece of software called CodeQL, which will scan the code for vulnerabilities. So that's hopefully giving people that assurance that there isn't any security vulnerabilities that are actually being put in deliberately or accidentally into this particular library. And we're very transparent. The number of bugs, code smells, vulnerabilities in the code base can be viewed at any time by anyone. So if you're concerned, you can view it. It's there. It's available for you. And then the code coverage and code duplication percentages can also be viewed. So one of the things is, because we are test-driven in the way in which we work and the way in which this library has been created, there's over 300 unit tests that ensure the conformance with the xAPI specification. Just to give that some context, I think there's about 1,300 tests in the actual xAPI LRS conformance suite. So so you can see there's a lot of tests that just check the conformance with the xAPI specification for sending and receiving statements. Sorry, well, sending and retrieving statements and other xAPI data. So there's a lot of tests in there. Okay, so ways in which you can contribute. So they're sort of from easiest to hardest, I guess. So one thing that you guys can do that would be absolutely amazing for us is watch or star the repository in GitHub. It's incredibly hard to find at the moment because it doesn't show up in Google. So if you're watching or starring the repository, hopefully it will help the Google metrics and hopefully pull the library up further into the search results when people search for xAPI in Java. Hopefully it will actually make it to the search results. Making it to the first page would be amazing. The other thing that you can do is share the link to the repository. That would also be fantastic if you could share it on whatever format that you thought was appropriate. That would be great. And then if you start using it and you find that there are issues and you find bugs, which there absolutely could be bugs, just because there's all those tests, it doesn't mean that it's bug-free. And you might find that there are features that you want to be added to the library. Absolutely, please, we really would love people's feedback. We would love them to create issues. So please create issues in the repository. We will read them and we will discuss them with you, and hopefully we'll be able to resolve the issues. If you want to go a step further, most libraries live and die by the documentation that they have. So the more documentation that we have, the better. So if you're so inclined, if you solve a problem with this library and you think that something's unclear in the documentation, we would absolutely love it if you would contribute to the existing documentation. And then I guess the sort of the final complex one, which would be the Holy Grail, is if somebody would like to actually solve issues by creating their own pull requests into the project, you are absolutely more than welcome to do that. And that would be fantastic if somebody did. You don't have to go that far, but if you can see a problem and you can fix a problem, then by all means, please open a pull request for it. And then finally, I guess this is more of an easy one. There's a discussions link within the GitHub repository where you can, if you've just got any Q&A that you want to do that isn't necessarily an issue, but a how do I, then please ask those questions in those discussions, or if you've got any feedback, please give that feedback in the discussions within the GitHub repository. So that being said, this is the actual link to the GitHub repository. It's got these different things. So we've got the issue tracker, pull requests, discussions, actions, releases, the code quality metrics, and samples. So let me get to the GitHub repository. So this is the GitHub repository. And yeah, so some of the places that you might like to look at is the releases here. So all the versions that are released are here. The README documentation contains a lot of the information that I presented. So this shows you how to get started. It shows you how to get a statement, getting multiple statements, shows you how to get the next page of statements. If the actual LRS has more statements than you've requested, then you can actually retrieve more statements. And it shows you how to do various other things, including sending and receiving data to the state resource if you're using the state resource. So all of this information is available to you. It also has some sample applications. They're not on par with probably what you're going to create yourselves or what you do create yourselves. But these sample applications here are available for you to see exactly a complete example of how you can actually use these use the xAPI client to actually perform some of these things. So if you're familiar with things like get agents, for example, then there is an example for how that can be used. So going back, so this is a piece of information about how you can use the actual xAPI Java model. Sorry. So if you're not interested in using the client itself for sending and retrieving data, then you can just use the model alone. So if you wish to create a statement, then this is how you can create one. And it also works in the other way around. So if you've got a statement here in JSON, then you can actually deserialize that into a Java object with one line. And if you wish to create a JSON object for sending to an LRS, for example, then this is how you can actually serialize this particular object into a JSON object for whatever purpose. So in terms of the quality assurance, so let's go and have a quick look at that. And I've got 1 minute, I think, to show you this. So as you can see, so the link actually, just so you're aware, the link is here. So we display that quite proudly. So it will show you the link any particular time. And you can come into here and you can inspect the actual overall code. You see the number of bugs, the number of security issues, the code coverage, the amount of duplications we've got in the code, and then the maintainability. And you can see all of these things have passed. So even though sometimes there's some issues in here or some maintainability issues, it's still actually at the threshold that we've set. A lot of these issues that you see here are actually just minor info. So if they were in red, if they were critical or major or blockers, then we would be dealing with them before they actually got into the project. So I think unless I've miscalculated, that's probably where I should wrap up. And then if there are any questions, then maybe now is a good time. I'm sorry, I haven't been looking at the chat, so I don't know what's going on. But if anybody has any questions, or if Katie, there's anything that you feel that I need to answer, then please ask.
So Katie has posted a question in our speaker chat there, if you would like to look that over.
Okay. No. You should be able to use the library with a VPN. That shouldn't be an issue at all.
So the question was, are there any issues using the library dependency with the VPN? And so, as Thomas said, there's probably not going to be any issues, so that's wonderful. If you have any other questions, please drop them in chat there or in the Q&A pod so we can kind of curate them. And I am going to be starting to call upon our project members here and team members. But before I do that, I want to, if you would stop sharing for a moment, Thomas. Thank you. And I'm just going to show quickly this right now. I'll start my So I want to thank Thomas for that great presentation right now. Just amazing stuff. I hope you could see some of that code. If you couldn't, I mean, you could have made it full screen, but if you couldn't, I have taken his deck and PDF'd it so you can look at all those code examples. There is a little paper icon to the left of the chat box there. That's where you'll find that PDF of his deck. And thank you so much, Thomas, for allowing us to do that. There was a question that came up, and I want to help people understand how they can join a project team or how to create a project team. So in Slack, you can go to channels, and then there's 3 little dots, and you can browse channels or create a channel here. And then if you want to find a team, search on #team. That's how all the teams should be created, is the beginning of prefix of #team. And then if you want to create a discussion, you can do #discuss. And there's a number of them. And then you have to actually join the individual teams or join the individual discussions. They don't automatically appear once they're created. You do have to go look for them. So if you've created a team or a new discussion or a new Slack channel of any kind, post that hashtag in the main, because everyone is enrolled in main and they'll see it. You can put something like, hey, I just started a new team to look at xAPI and Java. And we're calling it #team xAPI Java. Please join. And there'll be a little link there in the main and you can go ahead and join. So that's wonderful. So right now I am going to actually scoot back here a little. And I didn't get a chance to update this, but first we're going to hear from Team Rise. And we have with us today Michelle McCrory. Once I get her on stage here, I'm going to ask her to come to the stage, and she'll come to the stage and she'll give us an update on Team Rise. So, Michelle, are you with us?
Yeah. Okay.
There you are.
Hey,
Wonderful. Hi.
hey, what happened?
No, you're here. Your camera's a little staticky, but go ahead and tell us about the update you have for us.
All right. Well, our team is starting to kind of flesh out what we're trying to accomplish with our wrapper. Brian Floyd, one of our team members, is working on a wrapper that can be used with Rise to extract data, the xAPI data. He's going to make it give it a user interface so you don't have to know coding to use it. And we also have a wish list that we're working on. We have wishes like we want how long have they viewed the video playback speed, um, you know, did the learner interact with a Rise element like a conversation dialogue or an accordion? And then we are starting to work on specifically the statements needed to accomplish those requests and statement components. So that Rise only has 3 options for sharing data, and they're extremely limited. We're not sure what the components and the lessons are named, so we would appreciate any help or any links or anything if you know anything about what the components are named. That we would appreciate that. And we still have our course posted in social and I think the main channel. So just take a peek at that, and you can pretend to be somebody that gets all the questions wrong, or you can just go halfway through. We need lots of different data for our experiment.
All right, great. So thanks so much for doing that for us, and we can be a part of their team by actually giving them feedback. All right, thanks so much, Michelle. And today we have with us, we have with us Kelly Reed, who's going to tell us about Team Chat GPT. So go ahead, Kelly, when you're ready. You're muted, Kelly. Can you unmute yourself, please? Kelly, if you can hear me, can you unmute? I can't unmute Kelly, unfortunately. So Kelly, hopefully you can hear me and you can give us an update. Maybe if Doug is here, let me see if the other teammate here, because of the fact that, nope, it doesn't look like Doug's here, unfortunately. Well, unfortunately, they have a very, very robust team going on there, and there is a lot of information going back and forth in Team Chat GPT. You can just go up to the channels, you can subscribe and look at what they're doing. There's a lot of stuff going on. I did get another team update, if you bear with me 1 second. And that was unfortunately they could not be here. But this is for Team Storyline. And that one, let me just grab that. It's a hashtag team dash storyline dash spring 23. But like again, if you just look for hashtag teams in the browse in Slack, you'll be able to see them. You should also put in there a time, the most recent first, because there's a lot of ones in there that may be archived because they were used in previous cohorts. All right, so for Team Storyline, they have a number of action items that they're doing. They are getting some source for a short storyline course. They're going to sign up for an LRS trial, a learning record store trial, which you absolutely need, or well, you need to put this into practice. They're going to look at some blog posts, and They're going to kind of define their project goals and look at some roles to assign out and join the GitHub and project repository. So they're just getting started. And if you're just getting started, you go right ahead and put that in there. And we'd love to hear how you're getting started. We're signing up for a learning record store. We're getting into GitHub. We're creating a storyline course that's going to do this and that. So if you have any updates, we'd love to hear them. I really think this is such a way to learn together. And just a reminder, go ahead, go out to the lounge with your team, brainstorm for a few minutes here, and or work on your project, get things going. It's a great time to be part of cohort right now. Is when we're right halfway through. We have 6 weeks. We have 6 more weeks. We have our demos, and then we have our xAPI project party, and it'll be great. So hopefully you all will join us. I put the links in the chat. If you scroll up, you'll see where you can submit a proposal or where you can register for the xAPI party. And we look forward to joining you. Looks like, Kelly, looks like you have some controls now. There we go.
Yes. Hi. Sorry, my browser was blocking the mic and I had to reload everything. So here I am.
Oh, here you are.
With a
Wonderful.
belated update, if that's okay.
No,
You
please
did a
tell us
great job
about it.
summarizing a bit of it, but yeah, I can fill everyone in a little bit more. So yeah, like Karen said, I'm in Team Chat GPT, and let's see, I also had some notes pulled up before I had to reload here. So I think my colleague Evan, my teammate Evan, gave a little update last week. So I'll just share generally kind of where we started so people have a little context and explain what we've done in the last week. So just to recap, we really started with just not even an instructional goal, but more we want to use ChatGPT in some way and explore what might be available to IDs, anyone working in L&D and learning design, as well as what the constraints might be with using ChatGPT. So we have a kind of outline, a storyboard, no working prototype yet, but the kind of general direction we're going is to have something where our audience would be instructional designers and have them use ChatGPT specifically to write good multiple choice assessments, more specifically, high quality distractors. So of course, assessments is this huge topic. There's whole books, great books written about it. We're not going to try to teach how to write a good assessment, but rather the focus is more on prompt engineering. How might you take a poorly written multiple choice assessment with some bad distractors and put that in ChatGPT and learn to do good prompt engineering to get ChatGPT to improve your multiple choice assessment. So we have some outlines around that, and what we're expecting to be able to show at the very end is kind of it's almost like survey data from people going through this interactive and telling us how well do you think it did. Like as you take different steps, about 3 or 4 steps, we're expecting to use ChatGPT to refine it. So that's our general direction right now.
That's exciting. That's really exciting. And I
Yeah.
think I saw something about using how to write about assessments using Patty Shank's work.
Yes, that's
Oh,
definitely
wonderful.
a resource for me. I have it right here. Here we
Oh,
go.
there you go.
Write better multiple choice questions to assess learning.
Okay, and
Um,
Patty did not pay me for that, but I will be sure to ask her. No, it's a good. I love this idea with using Chat GPT. There's so many ways people are using it. This is a wonderful way of using it. So I thank you
yeah,
so much for sharing that with us. And join it. It
sure.
is called #team dash chat GPT. If you want to get involved in the team, please go ahead and join. And like I said, please join a team. Please start a project. We still have 6 weeks left. That's plenty of time to start something. So I want to thank Thomas Terrell Croft today and Katie Noak, his colleague. They presented that wonderful presentation on xAPI and Java, and put the resources there at the paper icon to the left of your chat. And everything else has been great today, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Go ahead, go out to the tables in the lounge and get your projects going. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you next week.